Good morning, everybody. DMGeezerjim here. This is going to be round two for you Twitch people, round one for my YouTube guys. Running another module review today, kind of continuing along in that series. The last time we were together, I ran a review for the module I1, Dwellers of the Forbidden City. Kind of ran some parallels between what it was like when it was printed and its current itineration, which is part of the Tomb of Annihilation campaign book. There's some cool stuff between both, but I wanted to kind of continue along the series. And let me say series, the designation, the module series designation I1, I2, I3, etc., etc., etc. They're not necessarily built as a campaign series. There are a couple exceptions in that, but the whole point was to give dungeon masters at that time a series of modules and adventures that they could run for their intermediate level and intermediate level skilled parties. So I1 was Dwellers of the Forbidden City. I2 is what we're going to take a look at today, and that is actually the Tomb of the Lizard King. So this is an older module. I'm going to adjust a little bit. My views slightly skewered today. I kind of playing with stuff a little bit, sorry. But yeah, okay, we're good. I2, adventure module for characters levels 5 to 7, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Fantasy Adventure module, Tomb of the Lizard King by Mark Akers. Older module, published in 82, second in the intermediate difficulty module series. This one breaks significantly from I1. Now, I don't want people to misunderstand and think that TSR just wrote I1, then I2. You had multiple teams of multiple writers and artists working on different titles. So this one may have come out a year after I1, but it may have been seventh in the production cycle. We don't know. There's probably information you could find. There's so much you can go look up out there to find out the timeline of production and the timeline of writing versus publication, all that. I'm not gonna mire us down in those details right now. Not super important. Old module. Let's take a look at it for what it was, and let's take a look at it for how it works in 5th edition. I do enjoy this module. This is one that I will adapt to most any campaign that gives me the opportunity. Now, this is my personal, I'm going to say adapt because it is very difficult to run as written. It's a very combat heavy module, and it was one of the first to really kind of give you a nice region to start in, even though it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the actual adventure. There is some overland travel required. The party's got to interact with a couple different NPCs. You're seeing here the lands of the Count of Eeyore, the Great Southern Swamp. Not really anywhere on a map in existence at that time for the Duchy of Eeyore, the Barony of Eeyore, nor the Great Southern Swamp. So even with the addition of named towns, Vendar, Newcomb, all of that, you're still kind of obligated to fit this into your world. So that'll be the first thing is when I say I do an adaptation of it, an adaptation is because I've got to adjust it to fit the setting that I'm in. There may not be the series of towns next to the swamp I want, or there may not be a swamp next to where I'm at. Things like that. So you've got to kind of adjust it. The history may not necessarily line up with your campaign or your story or what you're playing, and that's okay. It was an attempt at providing a why, providing a who, providing a where for the adventure. If you've been following my series at all, you may have noticed that a couple of the modules so far, and it's kind of a theme for your older adventure modules. There's really not a why. There's really not, in most cases, why is my party here? That improved with time, but some of your originals didn't. This was one that actually started the trend of giving you a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of a history, the region around the module proper. Now, the downside of this one, it goes a little farther as far as it names a town, names a place, names a kingdom, names all of this stuff. So you need to be prepared to either turn a small region of your preferred world into Eeyore, to read this exactly as it is or to paraphrase some of the names and some of the listings and locations to make it work. I'm going to flash to an example real quick, just to an actual working example. Let's go ahead and go back to our regional map here. So this is the map that they give the dungeon master to start. They start out over here in the town of Vendar, go through Arth, Newcomb. There's a safe Avon Hen, Robin's Breast Inn, the Great Bridge, and the destroyed town of Wacombe at the far side. This is the adventure track for the module for the group. For the first half of it, I guess. The second half is actually in the swamp proper. Okay, so swamp proper. Let's go ahead and go to here. They just give you a kind of a hex map for your party to be able to explore and find their way. Not super complex, not the hardest thing to do. Personally, I would have stuck that island way down here off of the far corner of the map where my face is. Make them use that map. But partial hex crawl. Your party knows it's in the swamp. They're not sure where they need to go, so they'll choose north, south, east, west cardinal directions based on the hex that they're going. And then us DMs would then navigate them further into the swamp based on the water channels versus the islands and adding encounters and all that. Okay, so that part will work in any swamp. That part will work in any swampy area that you can add, that you can find that's close enough to civilization to support the story. It works. But let's say, you know, I'm going to show you an example real quick. This is a map by Anna B. Meyer, a wonderful work of art, a just wow, hell of a map. This is actually of the continent of the Flanius, the setting for the world of Greyhawk, the adventure setting, the world of Greyhawk adventure setting, excuse me. Huge map, beautiful, more space than you'll ever touch here, more things going on at the same time that you could ever imagine. It makes, honestly, Greyhawk makes Sword Coast and Forgotten Realms look like a young adult fiction versus a matured matured fiction type of a thing. You know, you're looking at Nancy Drew versus Tom Clancy, in my opinion. You know, and I'm not knocking. It's just the depth it was putting into the history, the consistency, and all of that. Even the geography of the world sometimes doesn't make sense over there, but it's okay. It's a fantasy setting, and I'm digressing too much here. So we're going to zoom on into here, and we're going to notice that we see Vendar, we see Wacombe, we see Newcomb, we see the Great Bridge, Robin's Breast Inn, Haven, and then the Tomb of Sakatha in the swamp. So the map, whether Anna B. Meyer, obviously Anna B. Meyer added this, whether this was where she personally put the adventure that she used, or whether this was a decision that was made during Live in Greyhawk, the module has been adapted to the Hull Marshes Protectorate on this map. I'm not going to say canon. This is not a canonical map. This isn't an official TSR Hasbro map. Hasbro doesn't even, they barely recognize Greyhawk as an entity. Doesn't matter. I wanted to kind of point out the adaptation that the DM did to add this adventure to this section of the world doesn't line up with the map. Doesn't have to. Does not have to. This is just a perfect example of a dungeon master taking an adventure that they liked and adapting it to a region that works for their map. Okay? Beginning and end, no big deal. They even went to the trouble of renaming this tiny little river the Ardo River, even though you have larger rivers that aren't named over here. But that's okay. In support of your adventure. Your world, your adventure, your job to do it as a DM, and your freedom to adapt it as you will. So, we kind of talked about the beginning of this, or excuse me, the focus is the differences that you're going to have to address and to adjust for to get this module incorporated into your campaign. Now, that's the big picture. One of the cool things about this module in and of itself is the inclusion of descriptive boxed text. The past couple adventures that we've reviewed do not have this. And I hope I have emphasized to the Dungeon Masters that when you don't, even when you do it, have the box text, make sure that you're reading the location key. Make sure that you're aware of the expectations for that part of the encounter. Whether you, when you don't have the descriptive text, you can tend to give away too much information describing the room, or you can end up setting your party up for failure by not giving enough details for them to key off of. So it's one of those, it's, you're shooting at a moving target, but the target gets a little bit more stable as you get used to your group, as you build in your style. So some of us, if you've been dungeon mastering for a while, you have you have play groups. You know, there's certain things you can do to trigger their activities. To if I say this and I do this, I know they're going to do this and then that in response. So that's kind of helpful to know when you're paraphrasing and when you're looking at location key for. So we'll go ahead and zoom on back into this one here. This whole adventure starts with the party engaging with John Brunus, the Count of Eeyore. So they're whether it's this count or another one, the mission's going to start, the adventure's going to start with the party interacting with a noble, with a magistrate, with a mayor, with whatever position of power that you want. The encounter is designed to start out with an interview. Why are you here? Why should we trust you to send you off into the swamps to end this, type of a thing? You know, for a new party, that's kind of a nice place to allow each of their characters to tell their story. Where did they get to come here? For an experienced party, it's kind of for a party that's been together for a little while, their history can precede them, however you want to handle that. But it's an opportunity to allow for some dialogue between the players and between the NPC, to kind of decide if they're going to move forward into it. So the whole first part of this that takes place in the Count of Eeyore is a fixed, I'm going to use this term loosely, a fixed role play situation. Certain things are going to happen, certain things have to happen. The dialogue that the party employs likely shouldn't impact much unless they just come in there and show their proverbial asses to the boss. You know, then that's a different story. Are you one of those DMs that lets the players be the players and talk what they want and give them the mission? Do you run a living world where little peon 5th level characters should be respectful of a baron or a it's up to you. I'm not saying right or wrong, but keep that in mind as you engage in this section of the module. How are you going to handle the dialogue? Now, the next thing that comes through is there's some question and answer. The party has the opportunity to question some of the merchants, some of the caravaneers, to put together some clues. If you want to engage in that, you can. If you just want to put a write-up for them, and this is what we've learned so far in our endeavors and our investigations, go forth. Now, the next part of this, while they're in dialogue, there's actually don't want to say combat encounter, the potential for a combat encounter, because one of the acolytes that is inside is actually a hidden bad guy, and he'll set off a flame strike, a high level spell, 5th level spell, which is making this cleric at least what, 7th level, 8th level possibly. So they're scoring off with an 8th level chaotic evil cleric who sets off a spell trap and does some crazy shit and causes some trouble and escapes. It's up to you to really play into the chaos that this creates. The bad guy's supposed to get away, so again, you need to prepare for that as part of the encounter. No matter what the party should do, this is the railroady part of the adventure. This, honestly, as much as I love Tomb of the Lizard King, it is a very on-rails adventure. Despite them giving you a regional map, despite them giving you all kinds of little stuff, it is really a point A, B, C, D, E, F adventure. That's not a bad thing. Not everything has to be a big, huge sandbox. So yeah. Another thing, I'm going to rewind back a little bit and go up to the intro on this. This was kind of maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 5 modules would have this little disclaimer. Special warning. Before beginning play, the Dungeon Master should warn his players that this particular module is extremely hazardous. It is specifically designed to put characters of the specified levels to a severe test. Success in this adventure will require that the party exercise the utmost caution, think a great deal, and still be ready to hack and slash against powerful opponents. Some players may not want to risk their favorite characters in an adventure of this difficulty. In such cases, it is recommended that the Dungeon Master allow the use of pre-generated characters included in the back pages of this module. So, and that's something that we've seen in every module that we've played through so far. All of them come with pre-generated characters, give you their name, stats, race, class, saving throw. Everything you needed to run a first edition character was listed here. You could just jot it down, hand it to your friend that they didn't want to risk I don't want to play my cleric and have them die. Well, okay, you can use Azure, this cleric, and play. So, kind of reinforces the idea that all of your original modules were one-shots, short adventures, 3 or 4 sessions, some a little longer, some a little shorter, but none of the original modules were designed to be campaigns. You don't have campaign books like you do now. Nowadays, you start out with Lost Mines of Phandalin, Dragons of Icespire Peak, or Dragons of Shipwreck Isle, get to level 5, and then most people will kind of say, okay, what's next? Start over in a new adventure book. Curse of Strahd is huge. It's almost like if you don't play Curse of Strahd, you don't play D&D. I am not a fan of Curse of Strahd. I'll get into that later. I am, but I'm not. But point being, you have short adventures and you have campaigns. In the old days, in the classic days, everything was a short adventure. If it was a campaign, it was incumbent on me as the dungeon master to fit this into a world, to fit this into an overarching storyline. So if you're a world builder, if you don't want to play, if you like drawing up your continents and setting up your kingdoms and doing all of that, you might start looking into some of the old modules, because most of them are just enough to fill in a gap, fill in a few adventures. Very few of them are so world changing that it's going to mess up any big storyline you have, and all of them are extremely adaptable to make into yours. So if you're one of those, if you're a homebrew guy, there's nothing wrong with going back, picking up a $3 PDF, $2 PDF of some of the old modules and making them work for your new stuff. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you work. No one says that a homebrew guy has to struggle and map out every hex and every square and every name and find an encounter for everything. There's a lot of stuff out here already to help you do that. Focus on the big stuff. Focus on making the world make sense. Focus on the overarching end of the earth as we know it. Let the little detail stuff, the minutia, the day-to-day adventure, pick up some of these other ones and incorporate them in. Save yourself the time. Because that's all they are. They're not world enders. They're not plot starters. Some can be. They all have the potential to trigger and move along facets in your storyline without adversely impacting your storyline or even determining your storyline for you. So yeah, I'm a huge fan, especially for homebrews, especially for want to make it up as you go. Use modules, man. They don't, the old modules don't really bind you to a specific, oh no, now we're going to go fight Asmodeus because his name was mentioned in chapter 2. No, it doesn't matter. So on to the meat. Real quick, this is first edition. The vast, I want to say almost without fail, you'll be able to pull every one of the monsters that's listed here directly out of your 5th edition monster manual basic rules. There are not any unusual monsters. The only new monster that was given is the vampiric lizard man, and I believe he is a stat block in current 5th edition. If not, it's not super hard to set them up. So you really won't have a huge issue of translating monsters. Lizard man's a lizard man, lizard folk's a lizard folk, 5th level cleric NPCs, is so on and so forth. You might have to spend a little bit more time setting up your NPC cards, because there is a range of humanoid opponents that have spellcasting abilities that you might need to account for. But yeah, straight up, y'all, I mean, it's one for one. Well, let me rephrase that. Name for name monster exchanges between these two. A troll's a troll. Type 1 demon is a Vrock, etc., etc. There might be a couple things that you have to pull some Google out to line up with. But yeah. Now, all of that being said, let's say you just want to use this as is. I developed a very quick and dirty system to use for translating 1st, 2nd edition and BECMI stat blocks into usable blocks for 5th edition. So if you're in the position where you're like, oh, I want to use that exactly as that. Okay, a couple little formulas, and I'm actually working on an overlay that will contain this when I talk about it. Let's zoom in on our stat block here. Okay, typos. You're going to have to fight through typos back in the day. This was pre-spell check. This is pre-word processor. This is pre-word, the program, Excel, all of this. This is dudes writing it down, then typing it up, then typesetting it, and then blocking it in and printing it the old-fashioned way. So I'm saying typo because I know this right here. It says hit dice 22. That's wrong. That would be a monstrosity of a lizard man. Hit dice are the same in 5th edition as they are in 1st edition. How many dice do you roll to get the monster's hit points? So that's a lot. We know that should be 2 plus 2. Okay. I know that. How would you know that? You just look at some comparative stat blocks and it'll make sense. But anyway, lizard man. Let's find just to reinforce what I'm talking about. There's another block for some lizard folk in here. Polar men, Jackal Weirs, demons, Lizard King. You only got one group of lizard men here, really? No, that's a joke. Doom levels. Here we go. Carnivorous apes, hellhounds, the Great King. Hit dice 2 plus 1 for your regular lizard folk. So on and so forth. 10 lizard men, 2 1 2 2. Okay, so I digress. I was just trying to make sure that I wasn't lying, and that wasn't supposed to be some super special, uber tough lizard guy. Armor class 5. That means moderately armored. What I do is I take 20, which is your ideal armor class in 5th edition. 0 is your ideal armor class in 1st edition. So we start with 20 minus the listed armor class. In this case, it's 5, which takes it into a armor class of 15. So the lizardmen are going to start with armor class 15. Movement 612, that's going to be 15 swimming, 30 it should be, if you use judgment on the movement. Old school movement was given in inches because the assumption is you're playing on a tabletop with miniatures in a battle grid. Not work that way anymore. So use your best judgment. Typically 12 inches of movement is equal to 30 feet of movement per round, similar to for the 5th edition. Hit dice 2 plus 2. That means we're rolling 2 hit dice and adding an additional 2 hit points to it. That's going to give you a range of 4 to 18 hit points for your average lizard folk. Attacks. They get 3 attacks per round. Damage of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 8. Okay, I'm assuming claw, bite for an unarmed lizard folk, which is in line with your stat block that you have. The couple things that are missing here is, number 1, your saving throws. Okay, you're going to have to kind of make judgment calls on those. Start with an average of 12, give them a low stat of 9, high stat of 14, and kind of go in between there. This is more art than science because saving throws are completely different. Used to be a unified table for everybody. Depending on your class type or monster, everyone had the same saving throws. Now it's completely different. It's okay. Not the end of the world. One thing you have to adjust for is a proficiency bonus. You want to give your monsters a +2 attack. So what I usually do is I'll take their hit dice, divide that by 2, and give that their proficiency. In this case, they get a proficiency attack bonus of 1. That's a little soft. If we look at the stat block for a actual lizard man, lizard folk, I want to say they've got a +3 to attack and +4 to damage. So be prepared to tweak a little bit as you do if you're going to use the blocks as listed. Be prepared to tweak. When in doubt, import the 5th edition monster in its place. Now, I digress a little bit. We are going to talk about the power curve. Dramatic difference in player powers from BECMI 1st edition, 2nd edition, even 3rd edition. They were still tough in 3rd edition, but the DM still had some reasonable methods to oomph the party. 5th edition, players are OP. Part of the system. Everyone's a superhero. You start your character, you know that eventually at the end of the day, this level 1 guy is going to be level 18 and has saved the world from something. It's a foregone conclusion in a lot of 5th edition. almost a given expectation. The lethality is gone, the challenge is gone. I'm not going to go that far. I think that's up to us as DMs. Um, but you do want to make sure that you're adjusting old content to remain challenging. Old content was numbers, 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 numbers. Throw more at them, throw more at them, and that still works fine in 5th edition because of the thing called action economy. No matter how badass your character is, they can only do 2, maybe 3 things per turn. And that can be really badass, brutal things. You got your action, you got your bonus action, you might have your reaction. So always remember, plan for action economy as much as you're planning for hit points, hit dice, and all that kind of thing. If you've got small creatures, use more of them. Make a wave of them absorb the first round of stuff while the second round of guys, the second wave stands 20 feet away throwing javelins. Nitpick them, nickel and dime your party if you need to challenge them. But you don't want to suddenly have all of your lizard folk in the swamp at armor class 20, hit point 50, plus 5 to attack, plus 8 to damage just because your party's OP. There's supposed to be moments where they're just mowing through stuff, man. Think of all of your adventure movies out there, man. You got the 1 or 2 big boss fights, 2 or 3 big set piece battles, but the majority of your fights, your dudes are just, just wading through, wailing ass, just tearing it up. Fireball, magic missile, double. Give them those moments to cut down 12, 14 bad guys in 2 rounds, 3 rounds. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that makes the players feel more heroic than them having in the back of their mind they're guaranteed to beat every boss because it's our adventure and we're supposed to finish. That's where you threaten them. That's where you make them feel a little squirrely. Let them have the easy fight against 5 lizard folk and 2 crocodiles. You don't need to make it 25. That's my opinion. But everything in this module is going to run counter to that in regards to numbers. That's what the disclaimer about at the beginning about this being a challenging module is set. From your set piece battle within the castle where you have a 9th level cleric dropping flame strike and cure, all the other stuff to do a lot of damage, keep himself alive and get away, it's a powerful NPC opponent and he will recur. I believe his name was Mordrin, and he's kind of in league with our big bad N guy. So one thing that was given in that it's still listed in 5th edition. I don't hear a lot of talks about it. Random encounters. I honestly really don't use them very often either. I like challenging my parties in the encounters that they're in. And I think it's kind of crappy if I built an encounter that's going to run them to the very extent of their hit points and spell slots by design, for me to then have a random encounter of 3 hill giants and 2 ogres show up because the dice said so. I mean, that's the difference between first and old school and new school. And this might also be a maturity thing. When I was younger playing Dungeons and Dragons, getting into Beckme First Edition, it was very much the DM versus the party. The rules were built that way. It was a war game simulation with some added fantasy bolted on and then role play added as an afterthought. Nowadays, it's primarily a role play collaborative story with a tactical game stuck on secondarily. And so it's a shift. It's neither is right or wrong. Whatever you prefer is whatever you prefer. I'm not here to tell you your preference. I'm just here to compare the numbers. For example, we're looking at the random encounters here. 20 giant ants is listed as a encounter. 20. Now these are 2 hit dice each. So if we're just going to use the average of 8, that's 160 hit points worth of encounter that your party could potentially deal with as a random encounter. Now, 160 hit points for a 5th level party, that's not much for them to deal with. But when you consider they're hitting for a target for 12 to 18 on an average, they're still only going to be able to kill 1, maybe 2 per round. So 20 ants becomes a problem for them. You're looking at 3 hill giants. Now, a hill giant's a CR4, CR5 monster. So 3 of them would be kind of a challenge for a party on the road. A group of 5 level 5 characters, a group of 4 level 6 characters even. 3 hill giants, according to 5th edition, they'll land a couple rocks, they'll do some damage. Shouldn't be an end of the world thing. 5 ogres, 15 wolves, 12 lizard men, a crazy old man, human clerics, So there's a series of random encounters that are designed for the journey. Now, if you read them, some of them are actually designed to not, they're not all combat. Three of them are designed as dialogue, as learning something about what's going on. You know, hell, the wild boar is being hunted. The wild boar encounters a big ass boar that's uh, getting, you know, five farmers corner the boar, and you know, and as the parties come by, the boar starts whooping that ass. Maybe you let the farmers get shredded. Maybe you let the people help the farmers. Doesn't matter. So random encounters, when used randomly, take a little bit more planning than their name begets. Okay, the idea of back in the day just having three hill giants magically appear over the horizon, that was standard with the gameplay. Nowadays, there's a lot more expectation for immersion. There's a lot more expectation for interaction. So keep that in mind if you use random encounters. Are you using them just to use up some resources, and that's okay? Or are you using them to tell story, to add moments, and that's okay too? So your planned encounters is another kind of a dialogue thing, and then you've got an ambush at a bridge. At this ambush, they're getting hit by an additional 20 lizard men. So if they had one random encounter, took a long rest, hit the robin's breast, had their little dialogue thing, headed back out, they would probably have enough time for at least one more random encounter before they get ambushed at the Great Bridge. So yes, this is a 20 lizard folk ambush. That's a lot of bad guys, and it's an ambush that they actually the module goes through and kind of helps you stage it and how to set it up, and how to handle it. So that's another example of why this module is considered pretty freaking hard. 20 creatures rolling, odds are 5 of them are going to hit every round. So your party's going to take damage every single round from that size of an encounter. Now, if you really are nasty about it, you have them trap the party halfway through the bridge. Some of them's, you know, swimming up from underneath, coming from both ends, whatever. That's up to you to do to make it easier or harder. But yeah, that's a challenging encounter for the party. And then they get to the village of Wakehome. It's this tore up, ratted out, burned to the ground village. There's a crazy person there that's got some clues, and an inn that's got a little bit of stuff. And then there's another encounter that's been set up for the party, an ambush encounter. By this point, the party should kind of know a couple things are going on, should have an idea. The brigands are staged by Wakehome or whichever town you decide to use. And what they don't know is the whole time the party's been being scryed by this lizard wizard. So he's constantly setting up the ambush. That's why the ambushes are ambushes. That's not why the big things aren't just rando walk ups. So this one potentially has your party fighting an adult black dragon in the dark. If the party falls for the bait, chases the two brigands across the meadow, um, Alicus, the pet dragon of Sakatha, makes his first appearance. Now, number one, dragons in first edition, second edition, Beckme, third edition were a threat. Dragons in fifth edition suck. It is what it is, man. Don't bitch at me, bitch at Hasbro. Even with Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, they're pussies. They're supposed to be the apex predator of the environments, and we're killing them at level 3 in our basic modules, guys. Okay, Hasbro Wizards, you've done dragons dirty. You've set the expectations so low that the beast in the name of our game is a joke. Do something, fix it. Come on, man, make these suckers a little bit more powerful. You don't need to use a freaking Illithid dragon, an Elder Brain dragon, to put a challenge out. But I digress. I'm getting sideways. Your black dragon was your second most potent dragon back in the classic days. Your white dragon, black dragon, blue dragon, green dragon, red dragon, in that order were of difficulty. So you're dealing with an adult black dragon. One thing that you have to keep in mind back in the day is all dragons cast spells. In addition to flying, in addition to breath weapon, in addition to claws, bites, tails, wings, and all of that, they were all spellcasters as well. So that's missing in 5th edition. So a flyby of a black dragon in the middle of the night for a group of 5th level people is just an encounter. It's just an encounter because they can deal with it. 5e power curve is ridiculous. They're going to be able to deal with the dragon without it. So you're going to have to be smart about having the dragon drop a spell or two, hit a breath weapon, then just haul in his ass. Now's not the time to fight the dragon. But yeah, so the party gets a dragon fight pretty early, and then they make their way through the swamp. Now, the swamp is supposed to be the challenging part of it. You should be tracking movement. You should be tracking supplies. It's not a swimmable. They're going to have to use a boat, raft, something to navigate the depths of the swamp to get to the temple, which gives you more opportunities and mechanics to play with them. Crocodile or a giant turtle coming up underneath the boat, tipping it over, they lose half their food. Now they got to make some survival or nature checks to make sure they're not eating poison mushrooms, for example. They've gotten a few wounds on them. They didn't heal up. They didn't do anything. There's a chance for disease, infection, stuff like that exposed to it. Just make the swamp miserable, man. Just constant clouds of biting bugs. I mean, you can even go to the point where, you need to make a constitution save or you're going to have disadvantage because there's so many thousands of gnats and mosquitoes biting at you constantly. It doesn't do damage, adds to the environment, adds to the effect. So those are the little tricks that you want to kind of invest in as you're getting into a swamp or a marshy type area. Difficult terrain. Everything should be difficult terrain in a swamp. It's either swamp, water, weeds, muck, moss, slick logs, or all of that shit wrapped into one. There should never be normal movement in a swamp. Now, the plus side is that gives your characters that have, your ranger with pathfinding. That suddenly he's a rock star all of a sudden if he took swamp as his frozen terrain or as his preferred terrain. Any creatures with swimming abilities, any creatures with climbing abilities or flight, they get to shine as the rest of the party is thigh deep in the muck and the mud. So that also gives you opportunities to play with things like quicksand and have a rescue for that. But yeah, slow movement, miserable movement. I mean, you can add the survival element. You don't even have to add the survival if you just use the verbal cues and talk about how, you're 3 days into your swamp trip. Every single piece of clothing you have is soaked through with mud and muck. Everything stinks of mold and mildew and that sour yuck smell. Your body is covered in welts and bumps from the multitude of bug bites that you've received as you've gone through here. Every part of you that the armor rubs against is just itching as the armor chafes against the bug bites and the pockets of mud and muck that have worked into your elbows and knees and all of the various pits of your body. Man, get people in a swamp, make them feel the swamp. No different than a desert. I mean, I think adventures take place in these unusual locations because they sound dangerous. They sound spooky. But if you don't do anything as a dungeon master to emphasize that, if you don't do anything for the party to really feel, then it may as well be a freaking farmland, grassy meadow with the sun above them. I'm not saying punish mechanically. I'm not saying punish them by taking things away. Although if the boat tips over, it's always fun to see how much shit sinks to the bottom of the swamp. There's things that you can do like that. It's not a punishment thing as much as it's a environmental thing, a storytelling thing. This is where Dungeon Masters, it's not, we always think role playing as far as we're playing the role of Baron Hydale or we're playing the role of George the Farmer. You're also playing the role of the Great Southern Swamp. You are that swamp. You are there to make them regret stepping into it. You cannot, just yes. Learn how to do that as part of your as part of your DM toolbox. Lean into the smells, lean into the tactile feels, lean into the ook factor. It doesn't have to be gross. It doesn't have to be potty, bodily fluid ook. Although when you're in a sewer, emphasize that. Give them the smell. Make them regret jumping off of the ledge into that water to go across to the other side. Make them really question, the water's rising as the rain is stemming and the little floaters are getting closer to. I want out of here. Build on the human part of your characters. Attack. That's where we attack them as players, not characters. We're not hassling their characters. We're getting into the head of the players and making them feel miserable. Cool? So, kind of rewind. They've gotten hit by a dragon mid-flight. The dragon's supposed to get away. These are just some useful maps. There's actually a nice little floor plan for the audience chambers. If you need the tactical stuff, if you want to take it a little bit farther, you can. Again, it's a really big of a set piece. You have your Great Southern Swamp map. This is where you're tipping over their canoes. This is where you're biting the death by 1,000 mosquitoes. This is where, if you got in the water, you might come up and there's a little leech stuck to your arm. This is the gross part, the part, the misery part of it. Plus some combat encounters are thrown in there as well. And then you lead to the ancient temple. And if you're looking at the map here, this little island here in the middle of that, let me a couple zooms. The island's actually going to line up with the entry to the Great Temple. This is the dungeon proper. This is where Sakatha and his primary cultists live. Now, just for reference, the difficulty of this fight at the start of the ancient temple, I have never ran it as such because I don't think a group will survive it if you played it smart. The first thing you do is you have 5 lizard folk hanging out around those pillars, which will immediately be reinforced by 10 brigands, which will immediately be reinforced by 6 clerics of varying abilities, going from cleric of 6th, 5th, 5th, 4th, and 4th, and 3rd. So you have 6 casters and 15 melee combatants on this platform. Let me re-emphasize that. 6 clerics, which will have heals, commands, cure light wound, hold person, charm, all of the nasties that a cleric will have, sanctuaries, fear, whatever, protections from good, so on and so forth. There's a lot. These guys have a lot of spells, abilities listed. You'll have to prep that, okay? So, cool. They fought through 5 lizard folk, 10 brigands, and 6 clerics. And while they're doing that, actually, those are your random encounters that will be on this level. So you say random, but how random is it when there's only one level? So, you got trolls, wolves. So your guard room is manned by 2 brigands. There's one out here initially, plus your wanderers. The Great Hall of the Brigands. Is this level 1? No, this is Ancient Temple. Ancient Temple. Let me go with my Ancient Temple key. So you've got your Outer Sanctum. Crazy man that may have been with the party. 10 brigands behind the shell walls. The Inner Sanctum is let me go back here. So you've got 10 brigands out here, plus your wandering or your random encounters. Hopefully those don't show up. I would not use them in this. And then each of these little circles here actually contains, by the book, a water weird. So you've got 10 brigands, a few lizard men, 3 water weirds, and then you have the lair of the dragon itself. So if you're fighting smart, what you would potentially end up doing is having the brigands fight backwards, draw the party into the grasp of the water weirds, 3 water weirds, which are low-level elemental creatures, pain in the butt, not super deadly, but with 3 of them hitting in the middle of 10 brigands, and then Mr. Dragon himself, who is stationed behind that curtain on right here behind the secret door, will join the fight. This is where he fights to the death. A very old, average-sized black dragon. Those numbers don't mean anything to us now. It's a little bit different. Spells are there. Spells don't exist for 5th edition. So make sure that you bump up his hit points to account for the fact that you're not going to have magic use for this dragon. Unless you're... I guess Fizzbands has some optional rules. So you might have to do a little bit of digging around to get your perfect dragon if you're wanting to use a 1st edition versus 5th edition. So, I mean, it gives you some information on Aloysius. He's a 400-year-old beast, good relationship with the vampire, keeps him well-fed, keeps treasure around. He's not going to betray. Odds are he won't fight. Well, as a very old, protecting his board, he will fight to the death. So, yeah. So, after fighting through all of that, when they get to the temple, the first thing they're going to deal with is 10 brigands, 5 lizard folk, 3 water weirds, and a black dragon. Potentially at the same time. If you fight smart, if you allow your intelligence to fight smart, if you allow your creatures to fight intelligently, the party's going to have to fight all of that at the same time. They're not going to wait. They're going to use everything they know. They know each other. They work with each other. They'll probably call for reinforcements pretty quickly as well. So the entry to the ancient temple can be ridiculously overwhelming. But I mean, again, we go back to the whole idea of the challenges. So when we go from there, you've made your way. I'm going to scroll back down to the next map. So you made your way through the entry to the temple. Then that leads to dungeon level 1. Dungeon level 1 is a 26 room dungeon or 31 location dungeon that requires them to find a secret door to progress to dungeon level 2. Now, dungeon level 2 is a little bit weird. Number one, it's kind of cut out poorly on the map. That the map thing was the cover fold out. Dungeon level 2, as you might be able to see the little smudge there. The dude probably had to tape it together to keep it open. Not the best scan in the world, but it's okay. Dungeon level 2 is basically a gigantic wide open cistern with with dozens of lizard folks camped out in these mounds, and then the actual entry to Sakatha's temple, Sakatha's tomb, and his dungeon level 3. Okay, so as if the entry wasn't hard enough, we're going to go ahead and kind of look at dungeon level 1, which is containing all of your brigands, the humans and the humanoids that have sided up alongside with Sakatha and what was his face, the bad guy, I forgot his name earlier, the evil cleric that the party ran into to begin with. So once again, you're walking in, you've got the Great Hall of Brigands, and you're looking at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. 26 guys are going to be stationed in this room waiting for the party to enter. Now, let's keep in mind scale. Your maps in the old days were drawn at 10 foot. So this is a big area, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 foot across, 40, 80, 90 foot, 70 foot across, 90 foot high. So you're looking at what? 70, 10, 35 squares by 45 squares or yeah, 35 square by 45. No, 10 foot's going to double. 140 square by 180 squares. It's a big old map area in here. And this is designed as a set piece battle. So you're going to have to be ready. The brigands know they're coming. They heard the dragon die upstairs. Maybe someone came in and warned them. So rather than 50, 40, 31 guys reinforcing upstairs, which would be the smart thing to do, they'll wait down here for the party. The party can thank you for that because they die upstairs on the temple if this group reinforces. Period. The end. Okay. The brutality of first edition. Yeah, so you've got that fight, big old honking fight. Then you've got some more brigands stashed throughout the dungeon level 1. You've got some captains, some guards, Gormundel, which is a wizard that's in assistance of them. One thing I left off here. We'll get to it in a second. There's a lot of treasure in this place. So when you get to the level 2, it's kind of tricky. The idea with the large, wide open cavern area that's got some kind of openings with the sunlight and the rain dribbling in and all that, somewhat hidden under the surfaces of the swamps. Looks like there's a giant river that flows across. The party comes down a stairway, sees a river. There's a trap that the stairs can trigger and the party falls in. There's a river that's actually nothing. When they look at the river, it's phantasmal terrain. There's a chance to fall in some acid vats as they cross the Knot River, take some damage there, so on and so forth. They have a chance to disbelieve. If they fall in the acid, there's no saving throw allowable. They take 4d4 damage per round until they're pulled out. 8-foot deep acid. Yeah. So then you've got the burial mounds of the Lizard King's slaves. Shoo, let me roll down to that. So this is where old D&D is a little bit math heavy. if you're looking at this the map, it's not really easy to see, but you'll see the little. Let me zoom in. It might be easier. And this is where having the OG kind of helps on a couple. You see the R1 up there. We'll scroll up to the other map. I'm getting there. Sorry. R2, R3. The guide is telling you that each of those mounds is home to whites, a colony of whites, the servants of the Lizard King slaves. 4 mounds, each contains 16 whites. Whites are tough, dude. Now, back in the day, whites weren't as hard as they are now. I think 5th edition whites are actually tougher than old school whites, but 16 times 4, you're looking at 64 whites spread across that area. And then you see where it says the camp of the lizardmen, and in the distance among the rocks and hills, you can see a number of campfires burning. You can vaguely make out tall humanoid shapes moving and apparently eating around the fire. So each of those fires also has 10 lizardmen around them. Okay? How many was that? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're up to 64 whites and 70 lizard folk in this gigantic chamber. There's not walls. There's not anything to hide from. So when combat is joined, everything in this room is going to know about it. Everyone in the room is going to hear about it. So preparation point number 2 for this module. You've got to figure out how to deal with that with the lower tomb level, the first level. It has the potential to be a gigantic open field battle between whatever's left of your party and up to 60 listed non-player character monsters. No, I'm sorry, more than that. 120, 64 whites and 60 lizard folk, 124 combatants. Impossible. This is me telling you, with all the love that I have for this module, I've never ran those numbers in here even back in the day, and I won't do it now as 5th edition. That's psychotic, man. 164 bad guys against 6 level 5s. Action economy will determine that the party's going to die, even if they drop everything. And if they don't, if they have drop all their heat and they manage to kill it, they're going to be low on hit points, they're going to be low on resources, they're going to be low on spells, they're going to be low on everything, and they still got to go meet Sakatha. So the plus side is, in that kind of a mindset, that if they've been thorough and killed everything, they're safe. They can get in here and probably camp out next to when the lizard folk fires, take them a long rest. Probably not, though, because the big bad has been using scrying the entire time. There's never a point in this adventure where the big bad does not know what the party is doing or where they're at. So that adds the other difficulty to managing a gigantic area full of a bunch of bad guys. If they've made it this close to his lair, Sakatha's going to send waves. He's going to drop heat. He's going to send them all. In those fools now. Prove your loyalty to me. Bring me their blood. Whatever he's going to say, it's going to happen. So, unfortunately, you got to be prepared for that mess. And then when you get into the tomb, there's some traps that are built into the tomb that make things even a little bit more challenging. Heck, one of them, the door, you can only open it with knock. So if your group didn't come along with a knock spell, they can't even get into the tomb. How messed up is that? That should be something that they say at the beginning. Well, let's rephrase that. The doors have no handles, locks, or other opening devices. They can be opened by a knock spell or by speaking the words, "Open the name of Sakatha, the Great King." All other attempts to open these doors will fail. When the doors do open, they will open inward and silent. Now, the Hall of Traps contains a bunch of different traps, spike traps, wall shooty traps, spear shooty traps, just the entire hallway. Let me get down here to where I can just show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, we're going to kind of zoom on in. This might show you scale. Remember, 1 square equals 10 feet. So the big hall that I've been rambling about for the past little... Oop, I hope I didn't just break my shit. Control N plus, sorry. This area here, oops, I'm pushing the wrong one. Let me go one more. And it kind of stretches on the other map. Again, you're going to have to definitely map it out to make it work better for what you got. Gigantic area, huge arena, big old fight. Then you get in here and you have an even another larger temple. You got pit traps at either door. You got spike traps, spear traps there. And then you've got a couple other cool things in here. The banquet hall, all kinds of food, illusional stuff, messes with the people. Hall of Hunting, an illusional hall. If you've ever done Lost, what is it, the Tomoacon, you've got the mural that comes to life as the party goes by it. Each time a new creature, the mosaics come through. First thing is a carnivorous ape will jump out of the mural as soon as the party kills the ape. Hellhounds will jump out. As soon as the hellhounds are dead, a lizard king will jump out. And then after they get to level 8, room 8 is, or 9 is the Hall of War, which is just another 4 hill giants, 10 lizard folk, and a lizard king wait in this room for everybody. So just out of context, let's go back down to here. This little bitty temple here. So room 6, this is after they've dealt with a potential 124 combatants combined with whites and lizard folk. If you use the listed numbers, they've fought 124, dealt with 124, an illusionary river filled with vats of acid, and a slide that leads down to a fire pit. They survived all of that. Gotten into here. Hallway 6 has got a couple pit traps and then some poison spear traps at the front. Hallway 7 is this hall of murals that I was talking about. The moment you walk in, oh, I'm sorry, 7 is the dining area, right? And then 8 is the hall of mural, and 9 is the hall of war. So 6, 7, 8, 4 rooms. Once again, these 4 rooms, we'll go back through it. I'm just harping. Like I said, I love this. I'm not trying to disparage the module, but just this is a good example of the lethality that was packed in for an older module. And this is an intermediate module. This is designed 5 to 7. Hell no, man. This module swings for the fences. So if you're up here on if you're up here, let me roll back down. Let's just talk about those 4 rooms again. Hall of Traps, Banquet Hall of Lizard King, the one that's in the middle. The room has a trigger on it. Room 8 is the Hall of Hunting, which has the murals that come to life. Room 9 has a magical mosaic that has hill giants and lizards that will also come to life. The stairs from Lower Temple, let's find that, because I think I might have missed that. Because I think the silly thing is, even if the party does everything right in there, they don't find the stairs. Where do the stairs lead out? I want to say the stairs were from 9. No. Oop. Sorry, got a quick text there. Let's see here. Yeah, on a hall of 9, room of 9. So this is one of the things that's broken in this, now that I'm remembering it. There was no actual point that goes from 9 to 10. So you've got to figure out where you're going to put that stairway, because it doesn't actually lead anything. Okay? Now, Dispel Magics will knock those out. 6, 7, 8. All right, so you'll have to figure out which one of 9 or 10 you want, the 8 or 9, to put the stair down that leads to 11. Now, in 11, you're going to get hit by a 9th level cleric, 2 5th level clerics, and 12 lizardmen in the lower temple front door. So after all of that crap has happened, they've made their way down into here. They open the door, they come into 11, then they're dealing with, what did I just say? I forgot. A lot of numbers. Mordrin, the 9th level cleric that they met at the beginning of the adventure, in addition to Ogbund and Thalon, 2 5th level clerics that are his assistants. Also in this room are 12 lizard folk that are ready to obey everything. So that's waiting for them after everything upstairs. And then they've got to find the secret doors to get any further through here. If they find one, it leads to the Brides of Sakatha, which is a lizard vampire, not a lizard king vampire, but a lizard folk vampire, tough. Have the abilities of a vampire packed in the body of, I guess you would say, a vampiric thrall, if we're using 5th edition terms, or the one of, you know what I'm saying. A little bit weak, but still kind of really, you're going to deal with that thing the moment after you deal with the other ones. And then you finally run into Sakatha, okay? Quick numbers. Sakatha is an armor class 19, movement 40 walking, 12 flying, which would be 30 flying, 40 walking. Hit dice of 8 plus 3. He would be a fighter. That would be between 11 and 83 hit points for this guy. Not a ton for a big boss, if we're being honest. Not a ton for a BBEG. 1 attack by weapon type, energy drain. Now, this is different. Back in yon day, when a vampire, a ghost, or anything that had energy drain touched you, it siphoned your levels. So if you were level 10 and you got hit by a 2-level energy drain, you became an 8th level person instantaneously. No long rest, no whatever. Start erasing, start figuring. So there were some times where a game came to a crashing halt as 3 people had to adjust their character sheets down a couple levels. So yeah, it's ugly. It's ugly. The Vampiric Lizard King was listed in the Fiend Folio. He made his debut here. In addition to all of his vampire crap, he's also a 9th level wizard. He can class Cloud Kill, Wall of Fire, Lightning Bolt. So this is a very potent opponent. And that's the big bad end guy. That's kind of the module in a whole. I like the module. It's got a cool design. It's got a cool idea. It's got a cool theme. It is a meat grinder. It is a massacre. If you're going to use this for 5th edition, you're going to have to cut down the number of bad guys significantly. Using it for 1st edition, I cut down the number of bad guys in some of the areas significantly just to keep a flow going. So yeah, I2, Tomb of the Lizard King, intermediate module number 2. Very difficult, very brutal. The only thing that I would say that lines up with its intermediate designation is the fact that, dude, I don't know. I guess that it was toned around that. Now, there is one caveat here. In 1st edition, clerics, in all editions, clerics have the ability to turn undead. Back in the day, clerics were much more efficient at it, and their ability to turn went into destroying. It was a graduating scale. But an 8th level cleric actually has the ability to instantaneously turn a vampire and to destroy a lot of the whites. So in the instance that if you have a cleric above 8th level, which the module's not designed for that, but if you do have one above 7th level, half the encounters suddenly become easy because their cleric can turn and destroy in huge swaths of the bad guys. That might be one of the only things that put it in the intermediate intermediate bracket, excuse me. But man, overall, this is a thick module. No, this is a thick combat module. It is very much a hack and slash. There's a little bit of role play. There's some puzzles. There's a lot of traps to deal with. But man, it's brutal. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I guess I like it because, again, it's a good memory from back in the day. Some of it's nostalgia. It's a well-designed dungeon, and you have the flexibility to really adjust it to make it what you need. I loved it because right out the box, no matter what my party brought, I could kill them with any damn encounter. This was back in the day when it was adversarial. That may not be a good selling point for 5th edition. You might have to do so much work in toning down some of the encounters and strengthening some of the other encounters. It might not be a fun module for you. It might be too prep heavy. because despite the fact that you're able to pull every monster that's listed into this book out of an appropriate monster stat block for 5th edition out of Monster Manual or basic rules, there's a lot of magic users that you're going to have to manage. If you've never fought with magic users as a DM, if you've never swung at your party with a 9th level cleric, this is going to be the time. So much less when you have 3 clerics standing there surrounded by 4 melee opponents. Now your party is fighting themselves. Your party is fighting contemporaries. Your party is fighting people that are stronger, that are using magic, have weapons, have tactics and all that. So it's a big change in that. It's not just a dumb monster walks toward party and swings until dumb monster dies. You're dealing with intelligent opponents. You're dealing with officers, coordinated NCOs, things like that. So there should be your combatants have every opportunity to fight in a coordinated, intelligent way. So use it, man. But be smart about it. You're not if you use every trick that you have in your book, your party's not going to make it. If you're wanting to kill your party, if you say, "Hey guys, I got a hard module for you. I want to see how y'all survive." Run this sucker as a one shot. Run it as written, even with 5th edition characters, 5th edition monsters block. If you play it as written, you're going to stomp them. You're going to stomp them. They're going to die. They're going to be, "This was dumb. This was a waste of time." Is part of it. So the flexibility to take something that you know is absolutely brutal and tone it down a couple levels to make it fun is a good thing to have. The maps are suitable. The some of them aren't really useful, like your palace, your grand floor audience chamber. Steal that for a different castle. You're done. You don't really need it for this encounter. The Great Southern Swamp's kind of a clue in, gives you an idea what you're looking for. The lands of Count of Eeyore are basically useless unless you add the region to your existing world. Be prepared to bring this module into yours. Wakehome Village, basically destroyed. All but 3 buildings are 1, 2, 3, 4. All but 4 of the 20 buildings are destroyed. So from a meta, I hate to use meta. From a world building standpoint, from a continuity standpoint, that does matter. If you're close enough to a core area, if you're close enough to a large population base, lots of farms, all that kind of stuff, a village getting scorched into nothing without there being a time of war is going to attract some attention. So so for setting purposes, you might look a little bit farther away off the beaten path, a little bit further away from your main city. You don't want to use the high road if you're going to put this in the Forgotten Realms. Village being burned in the middle of right next, up the road from Daggerford. People are going to hear about that. And it's going to be resolved before your party ever gets there because it's something big that happened. 27 buildings are burned. The population's been killed and enslaved. The rest of them have run off, and the capital of the district is 50 miles away. No. So part of that is continuity for you. You may not care. You may be a DM that doesn't really worry that much about world building, and if you are that person, I tip my hat to your ability just to play and have fun. I'm a little bit more squirrely. Everything has to make sense. Everything's got to be a living world for me. So there are some weak points with this module on the setup. You're gonna have to do a lot of adaptation to change. Well, not a lot. You're gonna have to do some name changes to fit the stuff into yours. You're gonna have to change a little bit of the initial journey to fit into your world, or you're gonna have to import this region part and parcel into your homebrew world if you don't want to do that. That's up to you. But yeah, that's one of the big challenges. It's very railroady. If your party decides they want to go north instead of south, if they don't want to go to the swamp, adventure's over. The problem's in the swamp. It's not to the north. So either you have to redirect or be prepared for that to happen. If A doesn't happen, B probably won't happen. If B probably won't happen, C will not happen. So it is a linear railroad style adventure. It's not a sandboxy, choose your own path, find your own fun adventure. So that good, bad, it's up to you. Sometimes it's nice to have something simple and quick and focused to keep the party moving along. You remove the options for them, they don't have the options. They do what's in front of them, and hopefully have a good time. Not a lot of lateral movement in this adventure. Everything is point A, B, C, D. You don't get to go to A1, A3, B4, back up to C2, and then get back on track here. Those don't exist in this adventure. Okay. Random encounters can be brutal, as they're listed here. I don't know what they were thinking, man. I mean, some of this stuff is tough, dude. I mean, hell, you got a group of 6 clerics. 6 evil clerics dressed in black robes with magic weapons and full accompaniment of spells that could show up as a random encounter. 6 clerics would be a tough fight as a random encounter. I mean, that's like a set piece battle, man. So yeah. The art is passable. It fits with what you're doing. There's nothing that's going to jump out and go, ooh, oh, that's some of the coolest art I've ever seen. It's usable. It's utilitarian. It's passable. Maps. Despite my love for the module, I do not like dungeon level 2. I do not like when the map goes down into this big, gigantic, wide open cavern that's supposedly sitting underneath the surface of a swamp above. That messes with my head. I will tend to break it more into a kind of an irregular shape, give you some sightline breakings, give the break up. When I use it, I redo dungeon level 2. I redraw it. There's no way that the party is going to go in there and not trigger 144 bad guys with no sight, with everything being within sight line, with no blockages, no sound dampening, anything. So I kind of tend to break it into like a figure 8 type of a cavern, as it were, where you have the whites up here doing their thing, some sort of visual break, some sort of spatial break to then allow for the lizard guys to be in their own section. You know, if the party's dumb and loud and does thunderclap and lets everything within 500 feet know that they're there, they're going to come running. But at least it's not day one. Everyone sees the party come down the stairs and start sharpening their shit and get ready to fight. Dungeon level 3. If you're not good with doing secret doors, if you're not good with fog of war, if you're not good with disguising things, then the exploration of the dungeon gets super, super easy. If you're really, really good at it, and your party's not really good at finding secret doors, they're not going to finish the dungeon. They can't get to certain things in the dungeon without finding a secret door to lead to the next area of the dungeon. So this module will give you a chance to polish those skills a little bit if you've been waiting or wanting or lacking. You know, for example, just to get out of the dragon room, there's a secret door they have to find below the altar. Everything up here fights up here. There's a secret door that leads down to the first level. If they don't find it, what happens? The adventure ends. So, well, it doesn't end. But yeah, be prepared for that. There's every stretch of access through the tomb proper requires the discovery of secret doors. Okay, I mean, we're gonna look at, just so you know, I'm not bullshitting you. Okay, 1, 2. These are all normal doors. These are all normal doors. It's not a big deal. They can get their way through here. Secret door leads into that closet. Secret door leads into that closet. Nothing super necessary there. Treasure room over here off the side. If they find a secret door, they get to it. Everything until they get to this tomb area here is normal doors. This is where they have to go to progress. They've got to be able to get through one of these 2 secret doors, get around through here to find these secret doors, to find that secret door. Okay? And then depending on where you put your secret stairway in 8 or 9, they might have to find another secret door to get to 10. To get to 11, to fight a big old battle, try to find 2 other secret doors that actually lead into his throne room to other secret doors. So it's secret door after secret door after secret door after secret door in this dungeon. And I like it. I'm okay with it. You know, perception checks, investigation checks, sleight of hands to pick locks, all of that stuff. That's where it gets fun. This dungeon, the temple, the tomb, gives a lot of dungeon style play between pits, between spike traps, magical murals on the wall, poison food event tables, secret doors, 4 pits, dragon. It's all here. It's not in your most standardized, typical layout, and I think that's why I kind of like it. It's not like you're going from smaller to bigger. You're building bigger to smaller, and that's okay. But yeah, you have a self-contained adventure that contains most of the facets of a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. You've got a dragon, you got a vampire lizard wizard, you got a basically 3-level dungeon full of monsters, tricks, traps. You've got some heavy duty tactical battles to plan for and to deal with there. Um, every monster that you need to use for this is accessible through your 5th edition. You don't have to do a lot of restatting. You have some cross country adventure at the start of it. You have some role play dialogue. Has all your pieces that you want for an adventure. Um, very, very difficult. Very difficult and challenging for a party, but very fun. Um, Overall, I would strongly recommend you picking up Tomb of the Lizard King just to have something on hand to show you how brutal old school could really be. Kind of, and I'm not trying to prove a point by that, but more that it gives you some guidance. It gives you some pointers. It lays out how these things were set up before. How did you make a challenge back in the day versus how do you make a challenge in 5th edition? Um, it's a great module to take apart, use pieces and bits and pieces. My group is actually my Greyhawk group houses Greyhawk campaign group is actually playing through an adaptation of this module. I've moved it over to Mist Marsh, cut out the entire beginning section with the count of Eeyore and all that. They're getting assigned the mission from Blackwell Keep, and I actually tied it in with some with the Star Karens. Big old amalgamation project. Maybe someday I'll talk about it, but for right now, not a big. But long story short, this module is actually being in the rotation, in use. My party should start this adventure, and I want to say 2 sessions, and I've got it set up for level 7 play at 5th edition. We're going to see how it actually balances out. Maybe I'll come back with a post-action report after we play through it, just to let you know how my plans for a higher level 5th edition group went. Lower level, 5th edition, 4th or 5th, very challenging, and you have to tone it down to make it work for a 5th level group. 7th level, I'm not going to make as many changes. I'm going to see how it goes. I'll probably still tinker with the numbers. But I mean, hell, I've got a warlock and a sorcerer and a wizard. That's going to be at least 4 fireballs, averaging 30 damage. They could probably take out most of the second room's numbers as it is. So I might let them do that. I might leave it as it is just to see how it plays out, see how badly it goes. Although I don't want to manage 124 tokens on a virtual tabletop. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close up this review now. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're on Twitch and you've caught me during the day, my Twitch channel is D&D Business Daytime, video game stuff at night. I'd love for you to follow and keep watching, kind of doing the random thing. I'm still new at it. I think this is maybe the 5th or 6th thing I've done on Twitch and YouTube. No, I think I'm up around 10. Still stumbling through my words, still making some technical mistakes, but you know what? I'm having fun doing it. And more than anything, I'm sharing some information with you guys, opening up your options to hoping that you'll open up your options to other content, the old content that's out there. 5th edition's been out for almost 10 years. It's got maybe 12, 15 books, maybe 20 books that have been published for it. Kind of a low count. And a lot of us are wanting for content that's not just another campaign book. Uh, you've got the Radiant Citadel, you've got Candlekeep Mysteries, you've got the new Heist one that just came out. You've got Tales from the Yawning Portal. So we're looking at 6, 15, 21, 20, 33, around 40 mini adventures, modules, if you will, has been published in the course of 3 or 4 anthologies. Little adventures like this they have a short story, they have a start, a middle, and an end, a couple maps, and an activity. One shots is what they've been called now. Although I've never experienced a one shot that was satisfying in one shot. That's because I DM and I DM a lot more long form. That's more me than anyone else. But anyway, my apologies. I'm going to go ahead and close this up now. I'm going to continue on probably with more out of the I. Actually, the next one will be I3, I4, and I5. That would be Pharaoh, Oasis of the White Palm, and Tomb of Martek, excuse me. Those were later re-released by the Hickmans as the Desert of Desolation. One of the most outstanding module series in my opinion, and I think we'll go ahead and plan on reviewing that one next. I'm not going to do I'm going to do the super module, show you the original book, all the cool stuff that came with it, give you some pluses and minuses of it. Ran it in 5th edition for a little bit. Didn't get to finish the campaign, but I loved it. Group loved it. I'll probably actually kick it back out and start playing before long. But hey, man, until next time, if you're watching me on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. You're catching me on Twitch, same thing. Tag is DMGeezerjim. I have an Etsy, I have a Patreon, I have a Facebook, a YouTube, and a Twitch, all the same. DMGeezerjim. I'd love your support in on any of those. I'd love to connect and contact with you. Feel free to leave a comment. I check regularly. Would love to engage in some dialogue and you know, some discussions about these as well. But DMGeezerjim signing off, finishing up on I2, Tomb of the Lizard King. Thanks for joining me.